In this video, we will install the Amplitude Analytics Launch extension and configure it to send data from your website to Amplitude. Navigate to your property and find the Extension tab. Select the catalog and look for Amplitude. Hit the Install button. In order to complete the installation, you will need your API key. The API key can be found in the project settings in the Amplitude Analytics user interface. For the purpose of this video, I will just enter a mock API key and then hit Save. With the installation complete, we can revisit the configuration view to configure the Amplitude Analytics Launch extension. The first thing to note is that this extension ships with Amplitude's JavaScript SDK version 8.5, and it will load this from an Amplitude server. If you want to self-host and provide your own Amplitude JavaScript SDK, you can select Custom Library from the drop-down to provide custom code. In order to send data to Amplitude, we first need to configure instances. A default instance with a blank name has already been configured for you. If your website has multiple applications that require different Amplitude instances, you can add and remove them by clicking Add Instance and Remove Instance. Each Amplitude instance must have a separate name. The default instance will have a blank instance name, and this is also the recommended approach. You can also supply a custom user ID by either hard-coding the value or selecting a dynamic return value using data elements. The same holds true for the initialization options. You can choose to use the default options that Amplitude provides out of the box. You can select individual key value pairs to make your options object. You can select a data element which returns an options object, or you can provide custom code which also must return an options object. Finally, you can provide custom code that runs when the instance is initialized. More detailed information about each field can be found by hovering over the info icon, which will reveal a tooltip. Each view typically also contains a documentation link, and in this case there is also a link to the available options for each instance. In the next step, we will be sending data to Amplitude. In my example project, I have already created some rules which currently fire data to Adobe Analytics. We will be extending the chat open rule to also send data to Amplitude. To do so, we add a new action, select the Amplitude extension, and then select track event. To send data to Amplitude, we must first select the instance that is supposed to send out the event. By default, this will be the first instance that is selected in your extension configuration. For example purposes, I have created 2 more, and we will be using the chatbot. The event name is a mandatory field, and we will be entering chat open. Please note that you could also use a data element to populate this field dynamically. We will also be adding 2 event properties that will be sent along with our event. A static data source, which we will say that it comes from launch, and a dynamic field that contains the chat name, since there may be multiple chats on our website. In this case, we will be selecting a data element that contains the chat name. In the advanced section, we can optionally send a custom timestamp or user group properties along with our event. We can also configure 2 callbacks, which run when the server call to Amplitude fails or succeeds. When we are done with our configuration, we can hit Keep Changes and save. If we now build our library, the chat open will not only be sent to Adobe, but also to Amplitude. Heading back to the just configured rule action, we can see that the extension provides 16 views to choose from. These all map to functions provided by the Amplitude JavaScript SDK. They all follow the same pattern in that they generally require you to provide the instance that they apply to and then make the settings that should be set. As previously mentioned, each view typically contains a link to the Amplitude documentation where you can find more information about which settings these views require you to fill out. As a final remark, the extension also contains a dark mode which you can toggle up here. And that's how you use the Adobe Launch extension to send data to Amplitude Analytics.